I'll just try to set a little bit of context here. We all are aware that with the globalization, all the multinationals have, are there in are having their presence all over the world these days, and with their presence around, the manpower which are employed by such global companies are not left far behind. Typically, there are a lot of secondments and deputations that happen of such employees over the other group companies as well as in India. Now, with such deputation, the basic logic is to arrive at a standardization, parity in the quality, or even just having a consistency in the business operations of a group as a whole. With such arrangements of deputation, typically there are a lot of tax issues that have also crept in terms of these deputations. And two of the most important tax issues, is it okay now? Yeah. Two of the most important tax issues that typically takes the center stage would be permanent establishment risk for the foreign company in India on account of these deputations. And the second one being the characterization of the payments that are being done from the Indian company to the foreign company with respect to the reimbursements of the salary being paid at the home country level. The characterization basically goes on to it being held as a fee for technical services and hence taxable in India. Now, with the above backdrop, as well as the importance that is being given to ease of doing business, and the fact that India as a developing country would need these kind of experts in terms of bringing them at par with what the recent requirements are like. It becomes very important for us to understand the recent jurisprudence on the matter and the principles that are enunciated around it in order to arrive at an informed decision as a business as a whole. And be also aware about the risk associated with it so that we can take forward the practical challenges accordingly. Now, while there are a lot of judgments on the issue or the matter, what we have tried to do is so what we have tried to do is we have So what we have tried to do is we have encapsulated our discussions around 4 decisions broadly, out of which the first and foremost one being the Centrica decision, which is a very celebrated decision of Delhi High Court. It will not be wrong to say that this is probably one of the most detailed judgment on the issues as far as the secondment is concerned. What we have done in the other 3 judgments are the ones that we have picked up are more recent in times. These decisions are rendered in 2017 and 18, wherein while in 2 of them Centrica decision was referred to and the decision was rendered, in the third one, which is the EFUN decision, Centrica was not even relied upon. What is interesting also to note is that all the other decisions, the recent decisions that we are talking about here, have only handled the relevant aspects which we just discussed about from a tax perspective. None of them have handled both the issues together, the PE as well as FTS issue. Like for example, the Panasonic decision has limited itself to only FTS decision, FTS controversy. And the Samsung and EFUN decisions are basing purely themselves on the PE issues. So, like moving on to the first and foremost important concept in the entire scheme of things, before we begin the questions, what I have tried to do is bucket the main tax issues or the issues around these decisions into 3 broad areas. The first one being importance being played to the concept of economic employment or the legal employment. Now, we have international precedents or international guidance with respect to what would constitute an economic employer per se, which which goes on to have parameters which are based on who actually exercises supervision and control over the employees, who is the employer which is actually bearing the final cost of those employees, which is the employer which will be actually responsible for the work of those particular employees being given weightage to as far as the economic employer is concerned, versus the legal employment, which typically tags it back to the lien that an employee has with the foreign company. And maybe also to an extent that whether that foreign company or which company is it which can hire or fire those particular employees. Now, incidentally, in all the Indian decisions, there has been enough importance being given to the legal employment aspect, and therefore the tagging goes back to the foreign employer, and which is what gives rise to PE exposure as well as FTS exposure. Now, with this background, I would like to ask Neha that while we just discussed that in the Indian context, legal employment has actually been paid a big importance. What is a typical guidance that you have from an international jurisprudence or a commentary perspective on these two concepts?
Thanks, Anupam. So the concept of legal employer vis-a-vis economic employer was coined first time by Centrica, and it actually went beyond the concept of economic employer, and it was damaging to that extent that it said that the legal employer who has the right to terminate the employee and who actually remains the employer in addition to the secondment arrangement will be the real employer. And when we look at the same concept, that is the employment relationship, when it is discussed in international rulings or commentaries for that matter, it is the economic employer which is the concept which is discussed and agreed, and economic employer is considered as the real employer. But when it is discussed internationally, it is mainly in the context of dependent personal services. And OECD also mentioned the concept of economic employer to be the employer who bears the cost of remuneration of these employees, as well as has the right to control and supervise these employees for the work that they are doing during the secondment period. When I mention during the secondment period, it becomes very important to understand that we are not looking at an employer-employee relationship as a whole or forever. We are looking at a relationship during the secondment period. So, while the rulings have gone, Centrica has gone to say that the legal employment remains outside India, and that's the legal employer that has the right to terminate, that the social security right remains there. These, the facts that have been considered are more from a holistic perspective and not during the secondment period. During the secondment period, the employee, if he is under the control and supervision of the Indian entity, and the risks and rewards of their work are being taken by the Indian entity, then what is the real need to go to see who is the legal employer? Because are we expecting that the legal employer will sever the employment and send the employee to India? Will the employee even sever the employment, would want to do that? Practically, it's not possible. And Klaus Vogel also said that the economic and personal relationship between the employer and employee has to be seen to determine who is the real employer. Even various rulings outside India, UK rulings there are, which say that the economic employer will be the employer who bears the cost of remuneration of these employees. And going by the same principle, if we apply this principle to the Indian facts and rulings, we see that as a matter of fact, the cost or remuneration of these employees is actually being reimbursed by the Indian employer. So, I understand that taking a cue from what the international jurisprudence is on this matter, the fact is that economic employment actually remains in India. Hence, the whole controversy on this permanent establishment issue being brought out because the foreign employer is sending its employees in India and doing the services, thereby having a service fee, or rendering technical services to its employees, thereby having an exposure of FTS, should be considered, should be reconsidered, I would say.
So, absolutely, actually, I'll just like to take it forward from what Neha said and ask Poonam that, typically, ma'am, the legal employer as a concept is leading me to three major areas why a legal employer has been coined. Is that one, the employee still has a lien to go back to that foreign enterprise as after the assignment is over in India. And the second important aspect is that he still carries on his social security benefits abroad, wherever his home country is. Now, considering the commercial and practicality of the situation where a foreign national typically would not like to, do away with their social security benefits abroad and at least have a bit of security when it comes to, going back to home country and work for some place after the Indian assignment is over. Don't you think that even we in India should consider the economic employment as a surpasser than merely legal employment being held there?
Thank you for that. It's a privilege to be on the panel before such a distinguished audience. Any comments that I make are personal and have nothing to do with departmental view in the matter. So with that disclaimer, what I'd like to say is that you see that much is made of the distinction between economic employment and legal employment. Employee is not defined. We have a Supreme Court decision, very old, Harangadhara Chemical Works, and the apex court had said that the method of approach for determination of the employer-employee relationship is to consider whether there was due control and supervision by the employer. Now, we have the OECD Model Convention that Neha referred to, and they lay down several tests, whether the hirer bears the responsibility or risk for the results produced by the employee, the authority to instruct the worker, whether the work is performed at a place which is under the control and supervision of the user, and the remuneration is calculated on the basis of the time utilized. Tools and materials are put at the employee's disposal, number and qualification is determined or not. And then, of course, there's Klaus Vogel, who wrote under the heading of international hiring agreements, he put forth this view, that the question of who is the employer rests on the degree of personal and economic independence of the employee towards the enterprises involved. Now, in that background, we have Centrica, which is very comprehensive, and lays down a large number of tests. So this concept of legal, real versus, what is real, legal or economic employment? They put down a whole bunch of tests that you can validate the secondment agreement on. And what they said was that seconded employees' duties and functions were dictated by the instructions and directions of the parent. They retain their entitlement to participate in overseas retirement and social security plans and other benefits in terms of its applicable policies, and their salary was properly payable by the overseas entity. There was no purported relationship between the secondees because the secondees could not sue the subsidiary where they were employed for default in payment of salary. And that's fairly critical. And again, though they were given the right to terminate the secondment, they could not terminate the employment. So when you look at control and supervision, if you cannot terminate an employee, is that real employment? The original and subsisting relationship Centrica held was with the parent. The attachment was fleeting, and they said that, broadly this. Now, in this context, this whole concept of legal, and it comes from the US regulations. They lay down that, you have to look at the facts and establish whether the, whether the economic employment is actually the real employment. The establishment of a PE is a fact-based exercise, facts to be established year after year. And therefore, we've always felt that there are no real precedents for such an issue. And much would depend on the secondment agreement, and much would depend on the facts underlying that agreement and how they are fleshed out. Whether there's substance and whether the practical, I mean, if you were to do an employee interview, record a statement, or you were to do a survey and find that the facts were different from what is put down in the secondment agreement, that would be it.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your views. Actually, just a follow-up question on that would be that while we are talking about that the Indian employer had the possibility of rescinding the secondment agreement per se, don't you think that itself is also a big authority in the hands of the Indian company, wherein the entire secondment agreement could be, and just not about the fact of whether a hire and fire, holistically speaking, of that particular personnel would determine that?
I think that hire and fire is critical to supervision and control, and as is the where the secondee could sue. They could not sue the economic employer. They could sue the legal employer, for any default in payment of salary. I think those are critical.
Yes, but I don't think that OECD or the social commentary talks about hiring and firing as the one of the criteria.
We're talking about an apex code decision in Centric.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Srinivasan, if you could give some thoughts on the concept.
The problem we are confronted with is a triangle issue. That if the seconded employee is an employee of the Indian entity, then the other two don't survive. The permanent establishment does not survive, the FTS does not survive. If PE survives, the other two don't survive. If the FTS survives, the other two don't survive. So we are in a triangular conflict. So the idea is to kill the conflict by saying that we have employment in the Indian entity, and therefore whatever the consequence, the Indian entity will bear the taxes for its own profits, global profits being made. That being the case, the secondment contract or the employment contract itself for a global employee writes a very far-reaching thinking. The contract I would develop when I issue a letter to my employee, no matter where he is, that your services are liable to be rendered to the company and any of its associates, subsidiaries, JVs, and so on and so forth. So I will bind him by saying that each one of them is a legal employer. I am not the only legal employer. So the pitch of the argument should be to stretch the legal employer to as much as possible and not leave it to the economic employer concept as much as possible. So the idea is to construct the contract of employment itself originally, so that all the rights which are there with the parent entity or the overseas entity or concurrently lie with all the entities across all jurisdictions. Now, how you actually administer those instructions will be the management issue, but it's not a legal issue anymore. So you have to kill it at the point of legal employer versus economic employer, but making everyone as economic employer. That could be the first factor I will do, and if you do that, you will succeed. There are many countries which do this. Hungary, for a moment, recognizes only legal employment. It does not recognize formally economic employment. It's a European country. Europe is well versed with economic employment. OECD commentaries are binding on Hungary too, but it recognizes only legal employment. US has developed a nice concept of economic employment, but it's akin to re-employment. There would be a process of interview, there would be a process of appointment, evaluation of equal credentials, whether any other person can be equally appointed into that position as the deputy. All those processes take place. So the regulations of employment laws operated in such a way that it protects the tax laws also. Likewise, in India, when somebody who is a foreign national comes in, he has to come in under certain category of India visit. If he is coming as an employee, the aided law that he has applied for an employment and he has come into as an employee, the law which is under which he has come in, that cannot be wholly disregarded for tax purposes. provided he is a foreign national. If it's an Indian who is employed and he is coming back, maybe those restrictions may not apply, but you will find. So I would handle the contract of employment very, very maturely, rather than leave it to the discussion of course, whether it's a legal employment or economic employment.
Thank you so much. I think that was a fairly pinpointed answer, and I think that's right the point which brings me to the second important aspect of the entire transaction of the mechanics that happens is about the payments that happen from an Indian company to the foreign company with respect to the in a way reimbursement of the salary being paid at the home country for these secondees or deputies. Now the litigation regarding around this particular aspect is about treating these reimbursements as fee for technical services, and I think just from that perspective of fixing the employment at a particular place becomes of utmost importance here as well, to my mind, which will bring in a distinction between an FTS or treating it to be indeed a reimbursement and therefore not subject to withholding. So Mr. Srinivasan, I'll actually take to you only then that in substance, while we've already spoken about the importance being played to fixing the employment first, in substance, what would you think would help us demarcate a particular payment as a reimbursement versus a FTS in these circumstances? Again, on the employment or something else?
The reimbursement has to satisfy a very high test of pure agent. In indirect taxes, we understand pure agency principle quite well. It's less understood in direct taxes. We use casual term as reimbursement. Reimbursement has to be a triangular situation that I have paid somebody and I have shown you that I paid that body and I seek a reimbursement for you. That is a reimbursement. So unless three parties can be established and the correlation between the three parties can be well established, there would not be a test of reimbursement at all. So if there is a doubt that whether it constitutes reimbursement or not, then automatically it falls into FTS and you will not get the protection of reimbursement. So the triangular test is well established in indirect taxes. It is not as well established in direct taxes.
But sir, like if I place my reliance on whatever was discussed on in Centrica, I don't think there was any question with regard to not being able to prove this triangular situation, whereas in Panasonic, exactly the same situation has been raised and defeated as well, because in Panasonic, assessing was not able to prove this one-on-one correlation. So there, a negative judgment is probably now justified from a perspective of what we just spoke. But in Centrica, I don't see mention of this kind of not being able to,
a little more effort. See that in Centrica, we have to say that the High Court dealt with all the issues. The lesser levels, it was not as much in detail.
All right.
So a little more effort is required at the ground level before you go to the High Court. That you must be able to establish that this is employee number A, he is seconded, and I have paid him month to month this much of salary by crediting his bank account here, and this is the amount of reimbursement I am getting. If charts are not available on record, you will allow the courts to go a little hurried. I think you must contain the courts by facts rather than allow it to go into principles of law.
That's fairly justified. I believe I think.
I'd like to add to that. That Centrica actually held that, the payment to the secondees would be made by the parents regardless of whether it was cross-charged or reimbursed to them. So it's a fungible kind of, it's not that the reimbursement is used to pay the secondees.
So it is not just Centrica, and there have been decisions which are against. They have all used this argument that there is no, in a way, a correlation that happens from a circular perspective of the payments that are being made to the expats, which are done directly from the foreign company, whatever the portion may be, vis-a-vis the payment that happens as a cost charge from an Indian company to a foreign company. So what probably I can probably kind of conclude here is that where we are able to establish a one-on-one correlation on these payments, maybe our situation becomes a little more stronger.
I think the first threshold would be to establish the nature of services and whether these are technical services, and then depending on the treaty, if they're managerial services, you're okay. If they're technical services, then there's a make available clause, and you need to examine that. Once the nature of services is established, then the payment you're making, particularly where the treaty includes provision of technical personnel, and I don't see how you can avoid FTS. I think, if you have to choose your battle, I would say concede a P, but then, not a P, sorry, concede the FTS. But then, I think it's...
Ma'am, I think the distinction that we are looking at here is about whether I would conclude it to be really a contract for rendering services versus that there is a manpower which is actually being given to you for support purposes. Which is where the FTS versus non-FTS situation will arise. Right? If I'm able to justify with whatever the documentation I'm able to prove with respect to the secondees being in a real employee of the Indian company, I do not see a need for us to venture into the questions of whether it is an FTS or a PE. Because technically then there are my employees who are rendering services for my business and me in India. That was...
Absolutely. If you anchor the employment first, the other two will fall apart. We must anchor the employment first. I think that's the principle which possibly could have been done better than in Centrica.
Yes.
It traveled on all the three legs and failed on employment and succeeded on the other two by discussing extensively on the other two. Possibly it should have been anchored on the first one if you wanted that point as to be the winning point. It did not anchor on that. So I would possibly say, if you want employment, create a documentation which is reasonably good for employment. If you don't want employment, little to the liberal, now we'll travel between P and FTS, we'll know whichever is the consequence you can take. Actually, one more loud principle I'm thinking around, I may not succeed also. You take any characterization, be it FTS. FTS law says that you must deduct tax at source at a rate, 10%, 15%, whatever is that. Indian law, forget it. The treaty would say not exceeding 10%. So essentially the FTS can have a low rate of tax. That means you have to establish the expenses. If you say that my reimbursement test is what you want to say, that means income and expenses are equal. So in a situation of FTS also, you may land up with a bill withholding. If you demonstrate to the authority and get a certificate on the 187 that yes, it is FTS, but it's a reimbursement, and therefore
that's a very
uncertainty with that.
Actually, that brings us to the other important aspect which encircle around these arrangements, and probably the one that has most ramifications is creation of a PE on account of these deputies being in India. And I'd like to ask Neha that what would be the demarcating factors that one should be looking at in order to arrive at a decision whether I should be looking at an FTS situation in a particular scenario or a service PE scenario. My question here is emanating from the fact that in the recent decision that we have cited here, Panasonic, Samsung, and eFirms, they have all rendered the decisions independently of the other issue. While in Samsung and eFirms, only the PE aspect was being discussed and closed. On the other hand, Panasonic only dealt with the FTS issue. So it gets me thinking that, what could be the reason that the other aspects were not debated by the tax office person?
So, if we look at Centrica, even Centrica discussed both the issues, that is whether it constituted FTS or not, and whether the entity constituted a service PE or not.
Absolutely.
But the fact is that Centrica did not give a ruling on FTS, it just gave an observation, because that was not even a question before Centrica, whether it is FTS or not. So, it is technically, a ruling is considering only one aspect to rule on.
The PE.
Absolutely. PE or FTS for that matter. So, it's only one of the aspects which is considered. And now Anupam's question, if I understand correctly, is that which will be looked at first? Will it be FTS, whether do we satisfy FTS clause, or service fee? To my understanding, and I believe so, is that both in most of the treaties as they are worded, service fee and FTS are mutually exclusive. Either of them will sustain. So first, the nature of services will define whether they qualify as FTS or not. If they qualify as FTS, then definitely they will be taxed as FTS. And if not, then the fee clause will be seen. Because service fee clause excludes the services that qualify as FTS. But all this discussion comes only if we've decided that the employer is the foreign entity. So if we first try and prove our point, which has been discussed quite a lot till now, that the employment relationship has to be first defined and decided. If we can make our case strong enough to prove that the employment lies in India, then the question of determining whether FTS or P doesn't even arise. But yes, the demarcating factor of deciding whether we look at FTS or service fee is dependent on the nature of services. And also the terms of the treaty where make available clause is there and the technical services can be taken out if the know-how is not provided. So yes, my answer is nature of services.
Let's take it forward. Yes, please.
Let's take a scenario where you're able to anchor your employment, your secondment agreement to show that economic employment lies in India. Now, if that person retains his lien, which invariably secondees do, which is why they're called secondees, he retains his lien with the parent, and he's part of closing meetings which result in a contract with the parent.
Ma'am, I think we are now stepping into the deep.
Right, so you got to take it. That's why we say that it's entirely fact-based. You may have the strongest documentation, but then if you have, the facts support the finding that the act and conduct of the secondee binds the parent, which is what the BEPS is now introducing. Earlier it was only, signing authority, which I always believed had its origins, as we were discussing, in civil law jurisdiction law, in a common law jurisdiction like India. And those are recent decisions, I think, in Dell and then subsequently the Spanish Supreme Court decisions, Philip Morris, that if your act and conduct binds the parent, or if there was a recent Indian decision where they said that the person was present in closing meetings that resulted in a contract that was signed with the parent, then you have a dependent agent be through the seconded employee.
Yeah, again that brings us back to whether I am the employer for an entity or not. Because during the period of secondment, I would say that I'm the employer of the Indian entity. Because we should be looking at during the period of secondment.
But if there's nobody from the parent entity in the closing meeting, this is a fact specific, finding of PE.
That is right. Once there's a PE, it could be a service PE or it could be a DPE. That should not be a problem. Yeah. Unlikely it will be a fixed place, of course, unless you draft your contract extremely badly that you shall reserve an office for my employee if those offices shall be accessible by his disposal or our disposal, all those things. That will be a problem.
Yeah, just to add there, I would still tend to believe that a date would be a little far-fetched here is because while they are doing while they are under contract or assignment in India, typically they would not be binding the foreign company on any kind of business.
Domestic law, international law, everything is traveling a little. Actual conclusion may not take place. Efforts of conclusion are enough now.
Yeah, the BEPS report has
all of
taken
it will travel. So to hinge our point, if he is in the capability of conclusion or he is acting like conclusion, that is not
a foreign employee. Which reality won't happen, sir, because these deputies are mainly providing support services.
It depends on the nature of services, certainly. But all that I'm saying is, Madam is of the saying that if there's a senior leadership and they do come in and occupy positions of office in India, I would possibly have some amount of inquisitiveness to know whether they are concluding contract.
That makes sense. So, Neha, just to take it further, like PVS mentioned, could there be also a possibility of someone alleging that there could be a fixed fee exposure as well on account of the services which typically in the judgment that we are looking at are dealing with only support services kind of a scenario. So can there be an allegation that even support services do form alternate business for the foreign company?
Support services as an alternate business. So this fact was considered in a little old ruling of AR in ATNS, and they went ahead and said that when ATS is arguing that provision of technical services is not my business. My business is otherwise. My business is to do business in India, not to provide technical services. The AR negated that argument and said that I don't have a chance to look at your memorandum of association to see whether that is forming part of your approved business activities or not. But as far as fixed place fee as a concept is considered on account of secondment, if you can constitute a fixed place fee, that has been very well settled by the e-funds ruling on that matter, which fixed it that seconded employees cannot be doing my business unless and until they are rendering services to my customers in India. And the customers could be of any origin, resident or non-resident, but unless and until they are rendering services to my customers, they are not doing my business. And if they are not doing my business, then I cannot constitute a fixed place fee owing to those seconded employees. And more so, for fixed place fee, the first test is disposal. Do these foreign employees have the Indian subsidiaries office at their disposal? The disposal test has gone very far ahead in the recent rulings though, but like for example, we say Formula 1 has taken it way too far by constituting 3 days race as P. But as far as seconded employees are considered, I don't think there will be a situation that seconded employees will constitute a fixed place fee unless and until they have these two tests satisfied. They have the place at their disposal and they are doing the business of the foreign entity.
Exactly. So that is exactly what has been discussed in incidentally in the Samsung ruling as well as the e-funds ruling, where the business conduct was actually placed as a paramount importance in terms of arriving at a conclusion whether there is a formation of a PE or not. The conclusion was typically that there was no business of the foreign entity being conducted by presence of those people or expats in India, and hence the possibility of fixed place PE was excluded from the judgment. And e-funds being the Supreme Court ruling, we have it there.
E-funds is done very well with the fixed place PE, I think.
Absolutely. And so much so even for the Samsung ruling, they have finally held on fixed place PE only. So I would actually like to ask both of you, PVS and ma'am, that both from a department as well as an SSC perspective, a lot has been discussed on the term stewardship activity, be it Morgan Stanley, be it e-funds for that matter, the recent one. What would, according to you, be the expanse of the term stewardship? Where is the line that an SSC or an applicant draws in order to be satisfied that beyond this I will get into the zone of non-stewardship activity?
Morgan Stanley perhaps is the complete guide on it. To travel beyond that may be risky because it will not be, or it has defined two critics. One is to say quality control, and number two is to ensure quality confidentiality. But if you are in administrative law, you may say to ensure policy implementations and so on, so for global policy implementations. For example, now you find certain cases that you do have, for example, all my employees should adhere to certain norms of work, and as a leadership associated with maybe management stewardship to educate employees on what is the norms of work.
So I think similar is the finding even in the e-funds ruling, but then if I just take it back to the Srinivasan ruling for a moment, what I understand is that even they were typically support services that were being rendered there. Why wasn't, in spite of the fact that the PE was held, why wasn't this aspect considered that this could also indeed be a stewardship activity? There has been no mention about that in Centrica's ruling.
Centrica's ruling, I had assisted the senior counsel.
Oh, okay.
So I can say that the ruling did not go our way, it's fine. But the submissions were many.
Okay.
Order covers certain aspects of those submissions. If all submissions had been covered, still the order could have been against us because the facts are slightly skewed there. But still, we have to say that the principle of overriding title was talked about.
Yes.
That happens only in the reimbursement. I have the obligation to pay somebody at that time. So all those principles were quite well talked about. Centrica ruling anyway is approved by the Supreme Court, so it will hold the court. But I mean, at least SLP has been dismissed, it has some higher kind of values. So I think the only way to get over Centrica is to enhance the facts and distinguish the facts.
Ma'am, what about?
Mr. Srinivasan
Sure.
would say that it's a thin line and it would depend on the facts and the findings. If you learn and understand, and this is a case that G Energy Parks. It's a tribunal decision. They discussed, where seconded employees involved in finalization of contracts, etc. So it will really depend on the facts and the findings.
I can just add a little point. The direct tax code, the earlier version, not the one which is going to come, it had a definition of employer. And if we go through the definition, we will not be able to derive a meaning that refers only to economic employment. It is about legal. Now, what's the one is that? Well, no, it's not about, it only says able to master certain kind of relations, instructions. So it lends to economic employment. Actually, so another view to this is that knowing that we need global skills to manage businesses and you want Make in India as a policy, the government should possibly step in now and formulate a policy for secondment in a way that it works. And a government policy will relieve us from all the burden of pressures which are adverse to us, and we can possibly go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. Just to assimilate the discussions that we have had and the final takeaway from the that we were discussing, I'd like to ask Poonam ma'am that Centrica typically being the most detailed version of the ruling that we have on the issue, and today having the recent rulings which do not apply the principles enunciated in Centrica in totality and therefore rendering different decision than Centrica. Do we still believe, because Centrica being the most detailed one, the principle would still kind of carry through even now, even after when we have further decisions which are positive to the SSE also, merely because of the fact that in entirety the way Centrica handled all the tax issues have not been done in the recent decisions, and they have tackled the issues in silos of FTS or of P.
I don't quite understand the question, but what I'd like to say is that Mr. Ketan Dalal spoke about wanting to do business and certainty and litigation taking forever. I think on average 27 years or so is what it takes for a case to reach the Supreme Court. So our businesses where your business cycle is as short as 24 hours, 48 hours now in the digital space, are you prepared to wait that long for certainty? It would be ideal if there was consultation and consensus, because we are also a very large country with officers with varied skill sets across the. So it would be ideal to have. We were discussing earlier a circular that's been issued by the SAT in China, where they lay down what is to be examined in a secondment contract to determine who is the real employer. Likewise, in the US, there are regulations that lay out what you need to examine. So it might be a good idea if there was consultation and there was consensus on what needs to be examined and a consistent thing.
Till a government policy or circular comes, I would like to develop the law in a very careful way. First, I will develop a law where the Indian entity makes their salary payable directly to the secretaries. Now, that will establish a little better environment than reimbursement. The next test I will do is to pay the Indian employees directly, but give a finder's fee to my foreign country. Now, the finder fee alone may take the characteristics of each of the people. The Indian fee will survive. Then, as I go along, I will travel along the lines of tests. The Centrica is the ultimate test of failure. They have tried. We must try the other way actually. The law needs to be developed very carefully.
Sure. I think that's a good one, and I am not sure we are running out of time anyway today. So I'd like to conclude that I think a session of 45 minutes probably is a very small session to ideally arrive at a consensus, at least amongst us. And this would need a little bit more deliberation, but I think my personal view would be that the key lies in the fact that if you are able to make some efforts in demarcating that indeed the secondment is not merely in garb of rendering certain services, but is in essence really a deployment of a manpower by one group company to another group company as a support. I think that test would somewhere help us going a long way. And like Sir said, the documentation of the contracts, I think that assumes great importance in order to arrive at a situation that indeed the employment lies with the Indian company, and therefore ideally there should not be the issues in relation to a FTS or a PE exposure. With this, I will not hold you guys further with your drinks, and thank you so much for your time.